Good morning, everyone, and a very warm welcome to this Power BI presentation, Security and Governance Pitfalls and How to Avoid Them. Why do you care about this topic? Well, we've got the new and the old. We've got the fantastic blue-ribboned enterprise analytics solution from Microsoft Power BI, and we've got the perennial subject of data security, absolutely vital in any IT project. So we're seeing skills in both these areas so much in demand today. So driving value from data with Power BI and data security in a cloud-first world. But the combination of these skills is the perfect storm, leading to job security and hopefully for you, a long and fulfilling career. So we have three key messages today. Number one, we want to take advantage of this fantastic tool, Power BI, to drive data-driven decision-making into your organization to really differentiate you from your competitors. Number two, while doing that, you don't want to lose your job, becoming the victim of a data loss incident. And number three, you must implement governance over your data to avoid a big mess. People are enthused with their new toy, Power BI, and everyone just starts publishing data up to the cloud service with zero considerations for security and governance. In that scenario, things can soon come crashing down. The worst case scenario is you do experience a data loss incident, but there can be many other negatives also. So a lot of duplication, different answers to the same business question. Nobody's quite sure which reports to use, where to go for their data sets, which reports are in production, which reports we can remove. There are negative performance implications, a lot of competition, the same data sets competing for our Power BI resources, the performance impact on source systems, where many duplicating reports hitting our same source systems concurrently. So we're going to see today all the fantastic features available within Power BI to mitigate and alleviate these potential problems. There'll also be time at the end for questions if you wish to ask any questions. I'm Andy Jones, consultant with Coeo. So we help our customers, we're a Microsoft Gold partner, helping our customers drive value from their data via managed services and consulting. And my role is working with customers across a range of sectors, so financial services, insurance, construction, retail, architecting and implementing analytic solutions on the Azure cloud platform involving Power BI. And this talk has originated out of those customer engagements. So when we go into the City of London and we speak to the project stakeholders, their first question is my data secure, managed, governed, audited, documented, understood? Vital questions in any analytics project. There are a number of different experience levels in the room with Power BI, so let's just take the opportunity to get everyone on the same page. What is Power BI? We take our data from your source systems, wherever that resides, files, databases, cloud, on-premises, SaaS solutions. We ingest that data and we create beautiful visualizations such as this on the screen. So you might map your data. Where are your bets, your trades, your sales, your transactions? Where are they originating? You'll probably have some date-time intelligence in your solution. This is where Power BI really shines. So measuring your business month on month, quarter on quarter, year on year. Where are you against your 1-year plan, your 5-year plan? And then you can drill down into that data to drill down into accounts, products, sales people, stores, whatever that looks like for you. So we're moving from the old school descriptive analytics, just lists of transactions in Excel or reporting services, into diagnostic analytics. Why did that happen? What's causing your business to grow or unfortunately go the other way? This is where Power BI really shines. How do you achieve that? Via the fantastic free tool, Power BI Desktop, where you hook up to 100 and something data sources supported. You can prepare and transform that data directly in the tool. That results in a data model or semantic model. From there, you can create your beautiful visualizations just as we just saw. Then you enter part 2 of this story, the Power BI Cloud Service, where you can also create those visualizations. From there, you can share and collaborate with your customers and colleagues. So there are two sides to this coin, the Power BI Desktop and the Power BI Cloud Service. The yin and the yang of Power BI, both are essential. You implement the strongest security practices over both of these areas. So stay tuned for the service, but there's a couple of key topics with Power BI Desktop to cover. So first of all, you've got to roll out Power BI Desktop at your organization. How are we going to achieve that? We're going to hit aka.ms/PBI Desktop. That will take us to the Microsoft Store. We hit install. You're up and running with Power BI Desktop totally free of charge. Some of you will say the store is blocked at our organization. What can we do? Luckily, there's an alternative. We go to the second link there, the direct download link, bypassing the Microsoft Store. There are two advantages to the store method. One, you don't have to be a local admin on your machine. And as we're talking about security here, you probably shouldn't be local admins in your day-to-day job. Number two, Microsoft releases 10 or 11 updates to Power BI Desktop every year. You'll get those automatically via that first method, that store method. Now, some more of you will say, well, we haven't got access to the store. We're also not a local admin, so we can't use either method. In which case, you must find a method to roll out software at your company using whatever method you use today. Don't leave people out of date. Versions of Power BI Desktop 2 years out of date. We see this all the time in our training courses. It's obviously just good practice to keep software patched and up to date. But also, if you're lucky enough to employ the sorts of people who are interested in self-improvement, they read and write blogs, they attend user groups, they attend data conferences on a Friday morning in March. These are the sorts of people you want to nurture and retain. If they read about the latest features and they don't have access to them, they're just going to become frustrated and probably want to leave your company. How do you know what version you have today? Very easy to establish that. Open Power BI Desktop, help about, and it tells you on the screen there. I'm running the February 2022 version. On the day of my Coeo interview many years ago now, I got the train home, changed at Birmingham New Street, got my laptop bag down from the overhead compartment, and to my horror, no laptop bag was there. So you may think I was incredibly stupid to allow that situation to happen, and you'd probably be correct. But I'd be even more stupid if I'd also lost on that laptop my company's highly confidential data, HR data, medical data, customer data, whatever that data looks like for you. But that is a situation we can get into with Power BI. When you save a Power BI desktop application, it's saved as a single file with a PBIX extension. That is everything. That's your data transformations, your modeling, your visualizations, and the data itself. There is an alternative with Power BI template files. Let's have a look at what we mean by that. So there's my Power BI desktop application. I'm clicking save. It's saved on disk, a PBIX, almost 10 megabytes. There's a little trick here. I'm going to create a copy of that, change the extension to a zip file. Then I can extract that as I would any other zip file, and then we can see the constituent parts of that PBIX. There's everything, and you can see by far the majority of that 10 megs is the data model. That is the data itself, the data that you ingest in, potentially highly sensitive data. The alternative, I'm going to go to Power BI Desktop, Save As. There's a little type down the bottom. I can toggle one of two options. So I'm going to choose a Power BI template file here. and save that. If we now look on disk, we can see that that template file is a fraction of the size. 150 odd kilobytes. So you're not losing anything. You retain that transformations, modeling, visuals. The only difference is the data itself is not stored within that template file. Because these files are going to be everywhere. They're going to be on people's laptops. They're going to be on backup drives, OneDrive. You could email them to a personal email address. So it would be very easy to compromise sensitive information in such a way. Another potential negative, I'm a responsible developer. I want to commit my work to a source code control repo. So I've cloned my remote repo, made my change, committed the change, pushed it up to the remote repo, which happens to be GitHub in this scenario. There's my SQL bits branch. And then I create my PR. But if we look at the settings of that repo, if we scroll down to the appropriately named danger zone, we can see that that's a public repo. So perhaps I'm an inexperienced developer. I think I'm doing the right thing here, but I've just compromised our highly sensitive data onto the public internet into a repo that anyone could clone. So proceed with caution here. When you've got sensitive data, use template files rather than PBIX files. Enter part 2 of this story, the Power BI Cloud Service, built upon the Azure Cloud Platform. So 60-something geographies across 140 odd countries. So you're building your analytics solution on these rock-solid foundations, standing on the shoulders of giants. You need the highest level of accreditation, Microsoft employees to get anywhere near one of these data centers, airport-style security, metal detectors on entrance. Data is encrypted and sharded across many disks. When those disks fail, as they inevitably do, they're destroyed on site. So you're building your analytics solution on this rock-solid foundation. But how do you get your data up there? Very easily. Here's Power BI Desktop. I'm going to hit the Publish button, then navigate to app.powerbi.com, authenticate with my Azure AD credentials. I've got access to all my reports there on the Power BI Cloud Service. But which one of those 140 countries is my data now living in? We can establish that in the Cloud Service. I hit this little menu up here, About Power BI. And we can see that my data is living in the North European Data Center in Dublin, Ireland. So with a Power BI Pro license, you have no choice about where your data goes. It goes to your home tenant. In this case, it happens to be Dublin. So your first task in the cloud service is to speak to your security officer. What are your requirements for data residency? Do you work with German customers? Are you a US-based company? Must your data reside within the UK, the EU, whatever that looks like for you? If you've already deployed Power BI, ascertain where your data is today. If that matches your requirements, fine, all well and good. If it doesn't, you've got to take action. So you've got two options. We can move that home tenant. That's a Microsoft support call, a non-trivial task. You do have a second option with Power BI Premium. What do we mean by that? So you license Power BI by the Pro method we mentioned earlier. You pay per user per month. There is an alternative. You purchase Power BI Premium dedicated capacity. And then you get access also to some premium features. There is a hybrid. You pay per user, but you get access to some of those premium features. With that middle option, Power BI Premium dedicated capacity, you can place that dedicated capacity in a region of your choice. So on this example, we've got Wyoming in West Central and Texas in South Central. You also might have different requirements for different types of data, so you could potentially purchase multiple dedicated capacities to match your requirements. So 3 messages: ascertain your data residency requirements, where's your data today, put in a solution to match those requirements. Everyone in this room, their analytics environment is going to look different. There is a plethora of cloud and on-premises resources we can chain together in an end-to-end analytics solution. It would be impossible to cover them all. But what we can do is all work to some guiding principles. So enter the zero trust model with its 3 guiding principles of verify explicitly, least privilege access, and assume breach. What do we mean by these? Starting with verify explicitly. I saw this news article on the BBC News as if NHS staff didn't have enough to worry about in the recent past. They've got to remember 15 different logins with the obvious associated security problems of people repeating passwords, writing them down, etc. So what can we do to alleviate this sort of problem? One of the key benefits of Power BI is its integration with Azure Active Directory. So if you're already using Microsoft tooling today, Teams, SharePoint Online, Dynamics 365, Microsoft 365 with Word and Excel, you've already got Azure AD set up and in place. So you've got the authentication and authorization mechanism for Power BI there. So we're achieving our goal of single sign-on. Then you can layer on additional security features in Azure Active Directory to really enhance your security posture to the next level via conditional access policies. So if I go to Azure AD here, this is where you create your users and you'll group those users to ease your administrative burden. But I particularly wanted to focus here on this security menu item, and specifically the conditional access policies. This is where you have the total flexibility to create these policies to match your company's security requirements. So you give your policy a name. Is this applicable to the whole company or a subset of users? Is this going to be for all your apps or a subset? In this example, it's just going to be applicable to Power BI. What are the conditions that cause this policy to fire? So what devices are you going to support? You might have different conditions for somebody on a trusted device in a trusted location in your office. Then they're on holiday in Ibiza around the pool on a mobile device trying to view their Power BI reports. This is what we're talking about here. And then what are you going to make your users do? MFA, so a thumbprint on the phone. If your devices are managed by Microsoft Intune, we're going to say those devices must be patched, compliant and up to date for anyone to have access to the Power BI reports. So this is what we're talking about here with verify explicitly, so achieving single sign-on and then layering on these fantastic additional security policies. I heard this quote on the Run As Radio podcast recently: 99.9% of compromised accounts had no multi-factor authentication. So if you take nothing else from today, get these conditional access policies set up, specifically MFA, to really remove this risk. For example, hopefully today, if you've come to this conference, you've checked your work email from a new location, hopefully you've been asked to go through some additional security checks, such as a thumbprint on your mobile phone. Because today the world has changed, the consumers of your reports are working from everywhere. They're working from home, they're working on different types of devices. That's mobile, they're on tablets, they're on laptops, they're on whatever. We need to support and facilitate people to get access to this data. The days of just securing at the network layer and hoping for the best, they're over. We need to support people working in these different types of environments. This is where Azure AD and conditional access policies really shine. I mentioned groups before when we looked at that Azure AD screen, and I'd really recommend grouping your users at the outset of your project. You're going to apply permissions at all different levels within Power BI. There's 4 examples on the screen here. It will really ease your administrative burden if you do that via groups and don't assign permissions to individual accounts. When people join or leave the company, it'll just make your job far easier. What about least privilege access? Power BI is a bit of a Swiss Army knife. You can implement the tool in many different ways successfully. So you might take the bottom-up approach. You give your end users data source credentials. You say, you crack on. You create your own reports. The opposite is top-down. An IT or a BI person publishes the reports for end users to consume. There is a lovely hybrid teamwork option where IT or BI publishes the semantic model. End users can then self-serve from that single version of the truth. The problem in that bottom-up left-hand approach is you're going to end up with multiple versions of the truth. So, for example, a sales year-on-year measure. Somebody will use the calendar year, somebody else the fiscal year, somebody else will include bank holidays, somebody won't. In a retail scenario, it's common to exclude stores that are new, that weren't open last year and open this, or were open last year and closed this. So you're going to end up with half a dozen answers to the same business question, sales year-on-year. In that scenario, finance people, for example, are not going to use your reports. They're not going to trust them. The Power BI is a load of rubbish, and people simply aren't going to use the solution. So we want to aim for data governance, that single version of the truth for the same data domain. How do we achieve that with Power BI? Well, we can share that data set. We can publish that data set and share it amongst our company. When I publish a Power BI report from Power BI Desktop, I don't just get a report in the cloud service. I get two entities. I get the report and I get a data set. That determines where we go to hydrate our data model, or what's our ultimate data source, and the refresh cadence of that data set. We can share that amongst the company though, however. So let's take a look. I'm going to my Power BI workspace. I go to the settings of my data set. I can hit this Manage Permissions menu item here, and I can add users to share that data set. Again, I'm using an AD group, and I can grant access. Because I left those three boxes checked, the recipients have got read, reshare, and build permissions on that data set. Now, as a member of that AD group, I can go to the Datasets hub on the left-hand side. This is becoming more and more prevalent in Power BI, this Datasets hub. There, I've got access to all the datasets that have been shared with me. There's the sales and returns that's just been shared. And now I can simply build reports. I can truly self-serve and build reports from that data model on the right-hand side. That might have taken my colleague days or weeks of effort to create that data model. I can rock up, self-serve reports. I've created a report here within 30 seconds, and anyone in the company can do likewise. So this is true self-service against that single version of the truth. We're talking about least privilege here. So as an example of that, the recipient of that data set, I can now share that data set on via this little share icon over here. What if I don't want to allow that? I want to, as the owner of that data set, I want to retain who I'm sharing that with. Luckily, that's easy to achieve. So read, reshare, and build. I can click this little icon here and remove that reshare permission. Now, as the recipient, that share icon has gone. I'm not able to reshare that data set out. That is just an example of what we're talking about. So we need to go through every single security setting in our end-to-end analytics solution and provide the minimum required permissions for people to fulfill their role and nothing more. This is what we mean by least privilege access. What if I've got a few different data domains and data sets shared with me? How do I know which ones I can trust, where to go for my data? Well, as the owner of that data set, I can do a couple of things. So first of all, I can add a description of that data set, leave some breadcrumbs to people. What's the purpose of it? What's it for? I can also endorse that data set. So promoted means, I've created this data set, I own it, I think this is worthwhile of your consideration. Certified is the gold standard. I've got to be a Power BI administrator to certify data sets, but it means it's been through all our company QA checks, it's the gold standard. This is ready for widespread production use throughout the company. Now, as a recipient, if I go to my datasets hub, I can hover over this little tooltip. There's the description that's been assigned to that dataset to help me out, but you'll also notice this endorsement menu item here. The certified and promoted datasets, they float right to the top of my list. They really call out and signify throughout the company, these are the trusted datasets. This is where you go to build your reports. We saw sharing datasets. What about sharing the reports themselves via that top-down approach? You've got 3 options here: direct shares, workspace roles, Power BI apps. What do we mean by these? You publish content from Power BI desktop into workspaces in the Power BI cloud service. Just logical containers similar to a folder structure in Windows or these lockers on the screen here. Users either have access to a workspace or they don't. So 3 methods, I'm going to my workspace, I can hit the share button. This is direct share. You might use that if you've got a colleague, I created this report, check it out, what do you think? The second option is workspace roles. I hit this access menu at the top. I can then place a AD group again into one of 4 roles. A viewer just has read-only access. An admin can do what they want. They can potentially delete the workspace. Again, least privileged access here. The third method is create an app. This is the recommended approach to roll out reports to a wide viewing audience throughout the company. You hit the create app button, you give the app a name and description. You can fine-tune the content within that workspace you want to include within that app. You don't have to include everything as you do with the second method, the workspace roles. You'll then provide access to that app again via an AD group. You hit the publish app button. As a consumer, how do I see those 3 types of shares? So I'm logging in now as the recipient of those 3 shares. The direct shares appear in this shared with me menu item here. Any workspace roles I've been added to, that workspace now appears in my list. And for the apps, if I go to the apps menu on the left-hand side, there's all the apps that I've given access to. The first time, similar to your mobile device, you've got to install the app. So I can search, I can click get it now. There's the app. All the reports have been packaged up on the left-hand side into this neat self-contained entity called an app. Then my end users are off to the races. They can gain that insight from the data. You can roll it out to all members of that group. Everything we've seen so far has been binary. Users can either see a data set or they can't. They can view a report or they can't. What if you want to give different groups of users, different experience levels, different access to data in the same report? Power BI supports this via row-level security. So I'm selling products here in stores. If we look at the data within that stores table, we can see stores are either internal or external. But I've got internal users who should not be party to that external stores information. That is confidential, that's private. They should not be able to view that. What to do? Right, I go to the modeling ribbon. I can create a role here, give it a name, internal stores. I can then provide any DAX expression that evaluates to true or false. In this example, type is internal. Save. I publish that report up to the cloud service. If I then view my data set, so let's find it, hit the kebab icon, security, there's my role, it's got no members. Again, I'm putting an AD group into this role. Now I'm going to log in as a member of that AD group and view the report. we can see that that user now has only got access to 3 stores, only the internal stores, and it's even transparent to that user that any other stores even exist that is not visible to that user. So this, again, really eases the administration for you. You don't have to create an internal stores version, an external stores version, an all stores version. You create one version. You've got one thing to maintain, but you can share that out, giving different users a different experience depending on their permission level, their privilege level. Assume breach. Again, your analytics solution is going to have many components in its end-to-end solution. Assume breach means we're going to assume a bad actor, somebody with malicious intent, is going to reach each one of those tiers. What can we do to mitigate the risk of these potential problems? So containing that blast radius. So as an example, we've got an Azure SQL database in our environment. We're deploying via a bicep template. So as some examples, I can say Azure AD authentication only. I'm turning off SQL Auth. Simple single-factor authentication is not allowed. What about encryption? I want to encrypt my data at rest. I'm going to assume that my backups, my data is going to be compromised. I'm going to turn on TDE, transparent data encryption, in my bicep template to encrypt my data at rest. These are just examples. We need to go through each tier of our application, seeing what security features are available to us and implementing the strongest security practices. Also, all your different resources need to link together. So, for example, you're certainly not going to allow Power BI to authenticate to Azure SQL database using a privileged account, a sysadmin account, for example. We're going to provide, again, the minimum permissions required. So a nice solution is maybe create some views in the SQL Server source, because, for example, that underlying dim customer table you can see there, that might have additional columns in, such as credit card information, national insurance number. These are just examples. If you don't need those in your Power BI report, then don't allow Power BI to see them. Certainly don't ingest them, select star, just because that's easier. Obviously, it's more secure not to expose that data if it's not required, but also there's a performance impact. Power BI is an in-memory analytics engine. It stores data compressed in a column-based structure in the Vertipack engine. If you're bringing in columns you don't need, that's just going to bloat your model. It's going to impact your data refresh performance, so there's a performance impact of doing that as well. We're talking about assumed breach here. There's a role in Azure Active Directory called the Power BI Administrator role. If I search for that, we can see that that role can manage all aspects of the product. If I click your role here, we can see that I have that Power BI Administrator role. What that means is I can go to Power BI Cloud Service and I've got access to this admin portal. There are many, many settings here in the admin portal that administrators can set. I specifically want to look at these tenant settings, and if we scroll down, the export and sharing settings here. There are many options here for data exfiltration. So we've seen lots of different security features that you can implement today, but then we allow somebody to rock up, export all the data out of Power BI into Excel, onto their device and walk off into the sunset. They can do whatever they want with that data in that scenario. So if you don't want to allow that in your company, you've got the ability to turn that off via the admin portal. That is just an example of the settings here. There's too many to go through now. I always advise turn all these settings off at the start of the project and then turn them on a case-by-case basis for a defined business need, and then that is fine. Another example there is publish to web. So that sounds quite innocuous. We've seen Power BI is a cloud-based service. That's probably something we want to do. So I go to we leave it on, we go to my report, I can embed that report and click publish to web. I probably should start to get a bit worried now because this big yellow box with an exclamation mark, but I think, nah, it's fine, I'll carry on anyway. Publish. I've then got access to that URL. Now, if I open an incognito browser, so I'm not logged, there's no credentials cached, I'm not logged in. I can just put in that URL, and I've published highly sensitive information to the public internet. Anyone with that access to that URL can view our reports. So that might be a way around Power BI licensing for you, but it also might be a way to be looking for a new job if we compromise our company's data in that way. If you don't want to allow that, just turn that option off completely in the Power BI admin portal. That, again, that's an example. There are many others there. How do you know when these bad actors are in your midst? What could you do? Well, luckily, you've got access to the admin portal within Power BI. Again, open to people with a Power BI administrator role via the admin portal. If we go to this audit log section, it's fully integrated with the Microsoft 365 Admin Center. So there are many, many Power BI activities that you can audit here. As an example, we're going to look here for exported Power BI report visual data. You can search on a date range, and you can search for specific users. Right, here we can see, yes, this person has exported data at this date and time, this IP address. That can then lead to a conversation. You can go to that person and say, you know, what is going on here? What business need did you have to do that? And then you can maybe even turn that option off in the admin portal if it's not something you want to support. For example, you might have a salesperson who's leaving your company. They just go into Power BI, export all your customer data, their personal contact details, PII data to Excel, email it to their Hotmail address, and then they've got all that information. You can monitor here who's doing that, and then you've got the option to turn that off. So when you build a house, it's absolutely vital to build on rock solid foundations. And it's exactly the same with your analytics project. So get everything set up in advance properly at the outset. So roll out Power BI Desktop and get a procedure to keep that up to date. Mitigate the risk of storing highly sensitive information in those PBIX files. Establish your data residency requirements and comply with them. Comply with the zero trust model. So get single sign-on, layer on those conditional access policies to really elevate your security posture. Aim for a single version of the truth and data governance. Least privilege access, so how you're going to roll out and share these reports, Power BI apps. Implement row-level security to ease your administrative burden and only maintain one version of the reports. Assume breach, secure end-to-end each tier of your architecture. Go into the admin portal and turn off the ability for people to do things that you don't want to allow. Then monitor everything via the Power BI Administrator portal. If you do that, you're setting your project up for success. You're building those rock-solid foundations, but you're facilitating and enable that data-driven culture, but doing so in a secure and safe manner. I'd like to thank you all very much for attending today. We've got some time at the end for questions if anyone would like to ask a question. If not, please reach out to me if you would like to discuss anything we've spoken about today or Power BI in general, andrew@coeo.com. I'd love to hear from anyone. Also, please submit the feedback if you would be so kind. For every 10 feedbacks received, SQL Bits will plant a tree, so you're doing your fantastic bit for the environment. Also, everyone who enters the feedback here today will be entered into a prize draw, so well worthwhile you doing that. thank you very much for your time today, everyone.